was also in a search of solutions, not just having a huge toolbox of things that help me to live with an anxiety, but actually heal. So we're not talking anymore about anxiety, but we can talk about ourselves, we can talk about our emotions, we can talk about who we are, we can talk about our life lessons, but not always putting this filter of anxiety on everything. Hello, beautiful wild woman. Welcome back to the Wild Woman podcast, where we are always in pursuit of depth, truth, and inner wisdom. So this is episode 2 and talk about trusting the inner guidance. When I took a little moment after recording my first episode, I asked myself, what is something I could be speaking about in my second episode? And literally instantly, this one sentence or couple of words actually just popped into my mind straight away. And these words were anxiety, of course. And then it's the reaction to this inner guidance is like, what? Why am I meant to talk about anxiety? And then I started to actually kind of like, okay, let me digest this a little bit and let me trust the inner guidance and let me get over my reaction first. And this is what I found. So as I mentioned already in my first episode as well, that I have a huge history with anxiety. But then I started to kind of think about it as well, that part of the self-growth, self-development journey and kind of moving in and reinventing yourself, moving into this new era of you is a lot to do with kind of leaving your old stories behind. But the interesting and very important part is, though, that we never meant to leave our story behind. All of the chapters are extremely important. All of the chapters make me who I am today. All of your chapters make you who you are today. So I truly decided, yes, okay, let me truly relentlessly trust that inner guidance, the first thing that popped up, and let me talk about anxiety. And more importantly, my journey with it. Because other thing what I've realized is that I haven't really fully maybe told my story. And you can question how fully you can tell this story anyway. But I've spoken about it in circles and obviously to my private clients, and I used to speak about it a lot. About 10 years ago, I actually even had a travel blog where I truly opened up, maybe the first time ever, about my struggles with anxiety. And it was a very interesting time because I had grown up with feeling anxious. And at the time, I didn't know even what it was. I was sent to see a psychologist, I don't know, maybe I was like 13, something like this. And I saw a psychologist every week. And then I found out I have something called anxiety disorder. And I kind of grew up with it and it never went anywhere. None of the therapies I kind of went through really I guess treated anxiety. We more just spoke about it a lot. So when I finally came to Australia when I was 25 years old and I started to write a blog about it all, I felt like I am the only person on the planet who feels like this on the daily basis. I felt like, okay, I have completely lost the plot. Something is completely wrong with me. I asked this quite often from myself, really. It's like, why me? Why I am the one with anxiety? Everyone else seems to be fine. And I thought even people who live very close to me, like family members and my friends, thinking, well, their life hasn't been like that dramatically different from mine, but I'm the one suffering with this constant anxiety all the time. But I think I was completely blown away when I started writing this blog and I truly poured my heart out. And the feedback I got from it was completely opposite to what I expected. I thought this is the most unrelatable story. And I thought maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe someone finds it interesting to read who always wondered like what's going on with me, but I never had the language, the words, the ability to really speak about it. And maybe if they read my writings, then they understand me. But what actually I started to receive feedback on is that how many people have felt exactly the same. And people who I'd maybe known for years and whose life from outside, from my perspective, looked almost like perfect, looked lovely, adventurous, full of love and friends and things to do and places to go and parties to party and all the rest of it. And when I started to truly hear the stories, eventually I kind of asked myself, are there any people out there who don't have some level of anxiety in their life? But this only came to my awareness when I opened up the first time ever. And I think people really needed that. People needed to feel that they are not alone with it, and just someone needed to go first in their group of people they knew. And I think this has been obviously a huge inspiration for me moving on with my life, and I wanted to share about these things. And it didn't take long when I was also in a search of solutions, not just having a huge toolbox of things that help me to live with an anxiety, but actually heal. So we're not talking anymore about anxiety, but we can talk about ourselves. We can talk about our emotions. We can talk about who we are. We can talk about our life lessons, but not always putting this filter of anxiety on everything. Because one thing I realized growing up, when I found out I have anxiety, then I became this girl who was an anxious girl. I became this girl with anxiety disorder, and I started to see myself through it. And it was kind of like naturally accepted and became kind of like this hypnosis on me, this spell on myself, that I started to adjust my life accordingly. I did the things that my anxiety allowed me to do. I made decisions from what my anxiety allows me to decide. I made a lot of things despite my anxiety as well, to prove myself that I can. But at the same time, my life was heavily adjusted to what my anxiety lets me to do, kind of, from the things I eat to the things I studied in uni, to anything and everything, to the detail of what time I can eat what seat I can sit in a cinema, where I can go, with who, for how long. Everything was kind of became this regulated system. So it doesn't take a genius now to realize, even when you're listening to this, that there was a huge sense of like control that needed to happen for me in my life, and having kind of like this filter of anxiety, or the spell of anxiety, just gave me kind of like this reason to become very, like, I guess, controlling about my own life. But at the time, of course, I didn't see it. But few years ago, I had this huge, kind of breakthrough or realization when it comes to this hypnosis of anxiety in general, is that very quickly when people feel something, they have emotions, they have certain mindset, they have certain programming in their mind, then very quickly the conversation about these people becomes conversation about anxiety. And all of a sudden, these people have kind of thrown into the same bowl, and they all approach the same way, and all the little nuances of that person, their upbringing, their emotional state, everything is left aside. And that was definitely my experience with anxiety. I'm not saying this is happening for everyone, but again, this is where my story is important, where my experience is important, because I know for a fact there are some people out there whose journey with anxiety has been journey with anxiety, not journey with their own inner world. And eventually I kind of ask myself, is that why are we accepting this as a collective? Why are we accepting that when we're going to see a, let's say, mental health specialist, then we are looking for solutions, how to manage anxiety or how to live with anxiety, but we are not actually truly relentlessly we are not after the healing, the solution, something that we don't have to anymore manage it. Because if we want to manage it, that means we have already accepted this into our life. We are accepted the fact that this is who we are now. This is what's going on. So, but I always thought about kind of it's a bit weird, analogy or a metaphor for it. But I always thought, let's say if I blow a tire on my car, I don't drive into the tire shop asking, can I see a mechanic please? Because I would really love to know how I now can drive around this car on 3 wheels. I go to the tire shop to actually get a solution to my problem and get the 4th wheel going again as well. And I know our mind, our emotions are way more complex than just putting a new wheel. But at the same time, I never wanted to accept this, that I am meant to live like this forever. And I am okay with addressing the complex layers. I am okay to look deeper. I am okay to actually take my time, but what I'm not okay with is staying stuck. Nothing about my healing and this inner work scared me more than staying stuck and feeling like hell on a daily basis scared me. And I feel like this has been one of my biggest drives in life, that I was scared of feeling stuck so much that I was ready to go for the healing. I was ready to go for the inner workings. Because the picture already since teenage years was pretty sad. How I was feeling, I couldn't even sleep sometimes. I needed to be outside a lot. It sounds very mild, but I sometimes couldn't even be indoors at night to sleep. And not a lot of people maybe know that, even my family members, how much I actually sat outside in the dark of the night because I could not just breathe properly. I could not really stop my mind. I couldn't be indoors. There's this wild something going on with me. It was absolute torture sometimes to sit in school, and obviously you can't leave and you just have to be there, and or couldn't go to parties. I couldn't be in cars, in buses, in trains, but I had to travel a lot because I left home when I was, I think only, was it 15 years old? I left home to go to high school in a different town. So I lived in a different town since very early age, and I was traveling a lot between different towns in my home country in Estonia. At what cost this was happening, this traveling, because I couldn't eat like many hours before that, and sometimes I went like, I think the longest I went without eating was a week, because I was traveling in Norway. So it was actually, yeah, pretty crazy. I feel like I haven't really looked back with these eyes as well, realizing how crazy this whole system became about living itself, just because how I was feeling, and I was trying to somehow help myself feel better, or at least not feel as bad. And like I mentioned, emotions and mindset are a complex. They are complex things. But looking back at it all now, just because something is complex or takes time, we should never shy away from addressing it. Because when I look at it now, this month I turn 35, and in the hindsight, this healing journey has not taken me that long. Imagine a few decades forward and realizing this was such a short time, actually. When once you heal certain things, once you work through certain things, once you know certain things, you cannot undo that. You cannot not know anymore what you know now, and you cannot go back to certain time of your life and wish you knew more then. What we can do is just keep working with things as they come to us, as they are available. And the good thing is our healing is always available to us. Because I've, through my work now, I've heard a lot of people say these words, well, this is in the past. This is for so long time ago what has happened. How come this is still relevant today? And that's the thing. Our emotions sit as energy in our body, and they want our attention. They want to be addressed. They want to be felt. They want to be processed. They want their attention. And essentially, that's what my anxiety was. Just a lot of confusion about how I was feeling, about how I was kind of feeling as a young girl, young woman growing up in the environments that I was in. I saw a lot of quite traumatic things when I was a kid. Life was a little bit messy at times. I experienced a lot of turmoil in my families, in my close family, and in the relationships between family members. It was a chaotic time. I didn't feel like I was fitting in at school. I wasn't extremely bright. My first experiences within school weren't lovely, but something started to shift in me quite quickly. So I would make myself to fit in and learn and be smart at school and all of that. But this certain feeling within me, these emotions, they didn't go anywhere just because time was passing. And now when I look back, I know if I heal, then time heals. But just because time is passing, it's not going to heal the things that actually need that attention and that processing from me. And maybe if it relates to you, then from you as well. And now looking back, I know, like I said, that's what anxiety was for me. It was this tangled mess of so many years and years and years of emotions. And a lot of these emotions were coming from very, very far. Even at the time when I was just a teenager, they came from my very early childhood. And also I'm one of those wild women who also understands a certain level of relevance when it comes to past lives. So now I know there was a lot to do with this as well, but mainly it was just my inability to address my emotions, because what I was modeled as a kid was kind of like this very tough look, that you are doing good if you are really tough. You are doing good if you are very like this wall that no one can't like push through. And it was a huge value at the time that you are meant to be this like this tough woman, this unbreakable woman. And I appreciate it so much. This fierceness that I hold, this comes from that. This kind of like this attitude, this strong energy comes from that. But how it didn't serve me was that this is not the whole picture of who I am. So I completely lacked this softer side. I completely lacked this emotional side of me, this trust within me, this confidence within me. All I had was this hard energy of toughness, and I had a really strong mind. I always told myself, even when I was struggling with the hardest times with my anxiety, and sometimes I spoke about it with people as well. I remember there was this schoolmate of mine who said, like, Hannah, like maybe it's just the problem that you haven't, I don't know, smoked enough green stuff. And he was very open about it, and he was definitely one of those who enjoyed, green stuff sometimes. And I remember he asked me that many times, and he didn't, like, he wanted to talk about what I was like kind of experiencing and my journey with anxiety, but he always kind of almost like a bit like pushed it, like why am I not doing it? And I remember one time I actually kind of took it quite personally, and I just said, look, only thing I have in this mess is my mind, and I will not do anything that can jeopardize that for me. I'm going to take care of my mind. And I did. I never drank alcohol. I never tried any drugs. I never had any like experimental party drugs, nothing. And only in later in my life I've started to enjoy like a glass of wine and things like that. And I never took actually medication from my anxiety as well, although I was prescribed at an extremely early age. I was already prescribed my first Xanax tablets actually. And I think throughout the times between the teenage years and now, maybe 3-4 times I've been prescribed medication, but I never was able to bring myself to the point where I actually can take it. Because, and obviously you might listen to it, think like, yep, I was really scared to let go of that control, and I did become a bit of a control freak of my life, and all in the name of like trying to keep some sort of sanity in my life. But the thing is that once I embarked on my healing journey, it took a while for me to kind of decipher like what's the role of the mind here. Because my mind, as strong as it was very hard for my mind then to kind of like chill for a moment and take a backseat, so my heart and my body gets to speak for a moment. And this is what we speak about when we speak about feminine energy. It's not about only about what the mind thinks it's logical, the right thing to do, what makes sense, what we should be doing. That's our whole life, I guess, who's living in a very kind of like a normal average lifestyle. If you go to school as a young girl, you go to different things. Educational system is very like, restrictive in that way, expensive in a way that, it teaches us and the more things we know, the more things we learn. It opens a lot of doors for us, absolutely. But on the emotional, softer, intuitive side, it completely diminishes it. Not for everyone, of course, so I don't want to generalize here things, but for me, it completely shut me down. And I didn't have in anywhere else in my life either like these good role models who were talking about, for example, vulnerability and trusting yourself and things like that. I did not have a whole lot of this type of energy in my life at the time. It was more like people were really worried for me for not being outgoing enough, for not going to places, for not trying this, for not doing that, and or some people were worried for me being like to this, to that. But I always sensed like that there was this constant race for just achieving and doing and kind of keep going. And if you look at this time of life as well, you know, since kids, you travel with the same people in school. You have like your whole school is doing the same thing. Your friendship groups, your classmates, your girlfriends, everyone's doing the same thing, talking about the same thing. So you're constantly validated just with the group of people around you that you are doing the right thing at all times because everyone else around you is doing the same thing. But what happens when one day this like the school journey is done and now you are, I don't know, changing schools or deciding not to study anymore? All of a sudden you are on your own and you have developed this like feedback system that you know you're doing the right thing because everyone else is doing the same thing, or someone is very ready to tell you are you doing the right thing. Someone is there always like the leader, you know, in front of the class or in a friendship group. So there is always like a very easily measurable, comparable kind of like a system around you that you are just a tiny like a part of. But I think at the time growing up, already then I had a certain type of like, almost maybe like a rebellious side that I wanted to do things a little bit my way, stand out in a way, or that I just could not really ignore that part of myself. But still, I had to go through this time when I had to break through this mind that was so tough and strong and protective, almost defensive of how I was feeling. And my healing journey was a lot about allowing my mind to just take a moment to breathe and let the rest of my inner wisdom also speak. And that's where my intuition started to speak with me. And of course it has always spoken to me, but then I could hear it, because all of our intuition, at least that's what I found, is something that your body reads. Your only instrument, our only instrument, or this vessel in our life, is our body. That's all we got kind of really truly to live in, to experience life with. And I know so many women are looking for this intuitive path and this connection with their intuition. And now looking back, it was extremely important to kind of start building up this connection with my body rather than the logic mind that is very quick to jump in and tell exactly how things should be done and when they should be done by and how and maybe better and maybe faster and so on, because that's the huge programming of the mind, right? That there's always we can achieve better and so on. But the body doesn't care about any of that. Body has its own rhythm. Your body has its own intelligence. Your soul has its own depth, your own inner truth. And knowing now and looking back how big was the gap between the two, what my mind was kind of taught and what I was teaching my mind to do, and how it helped me, or tried to help me to, at the time, manage my anxiety, and what my body and inner truth and wisdom was trying to teach me to actually heal my emotional state, right? Very big difference. One is a conversation still about talking about anxiety, and the other side, your intuitive path, your emotional path, and understanding kind of like your body's inner guidance and wisdom, is a conversation about you. And I feel that is one of the main messages, one of the main learnings that I have brought forward from my own experience, that I now use in my work with my gorgeous clients absolutely every single time. That we got to be very careful what type of words we are throwing around, because people looking for this connection with themselves, people looking for these healings, they might not know at the time exactly what they're looking for, but one of the main things I know everyone is looking for is a sense of belonging and sense of validation, and that's beautiful. It's the most natural thing for humans to want to belong and want to feel validated in their in who they are. And if we throw around these big words and put this I don't know, diagnoses, labels, these big cast spells on people, like the word anxiety, then their sense of belonging becomes to that word, and it's very easy to identify with everything they've heard about anxiety, everything they've felt about anxiety, every single little energetic thing that is attached in a collective pool of energy, this word of anxiety, these people will then accept into their own being, into their own life, and it becomes very quickly part of their who they are. And this is, at least on my example, this is what happened. And same with, eventually here in Australia, I got diagnosed with depression as well, and same thing happened. I still didn't have the I guess the understanding of things, that I would just reject certain things, or at least I would question, is it true about me? Rather, I was thinking, wow, I must be that messed up that this person after 7-minute conversation knows that I have depression and straight away very confidently prescribed medication for me. It must be that obvious. How have I missed the fact that I am that depressed? And I became really depressed after that. Well, actually, I just knowingly and unknowingly accepted into my energy field, into my mind, into my body, just the word with all the energy it carries, that now I'm one of those depressed people, on top of being one of those anxious people as well. Until I completely flipped the script and started talking about all these things that I mentioned. It was about me now. It had to become, the conversation had to become about me. And same approach I bring to my clients, that the conversation has to be about you. It has to be about you, not about the things that you've told. We can talk about them briefly, so I know your story, so you get to know your own story. You get to see the big picture of your story. But you get to choose what is truth to you. And you get to re-choose in every moment you like. You get to reinvent yourself at any moment you like. Your truth can change so many times throughout your life. Every day you can choose a new one. But it's important that it's your choice what it is. And it has become my mission to speak about this truth, utilizing kind of like your body as this vessel, as this your main way to decipher what is something that someone told you, and it may or may not be true for you, but it's your choice to at least ask this from yourself. And it's your job to be there for yourself. And it's a beautiful thing when you start to discover that it has always been available to you, but maybe you didn't remember it. So you start to remember this power within you, and you start to remember what is really important about you. And you start to remember that you have the right to heal and completely create this plot twist energy in your life, rather than keep asking questions, how do I now manage all my problems? No, let's find a solution. Let's heal. And let's be relentless in that search. And let's not shy away from doing that inner work. And let's not worry about how complex it's going to be. It's, at least for me, it was way more complex to try and quote unquote live normally with how I was feeling and how exhausted I constantly was from feeling so anxious, so just suppressed and restricted, and being such a tangled mess within myself, and having no way to release that energy from within me. So I think you now see, feel, know where this search, this pursuit for depth, truth, and inner wisdom comes from. That's why I think, I feel, I know it is so important, so damn vital, essential for women to go deeper, to question, to trust who they are, to start building a relationship with the things that are true to them, to start building the relationship with the fact that they have their own inner truth, and they have as big of a right as me, as any woman they have ever heard of and they look up to. We have like great women here in our very recent history that we can look up to, who have been relentless in their journey, in their pursuit of their success, for example. But what every one of them has in common is the fact that they were relentless in their own inner truth as well. And this is what I feel like if we want to heal and we want to have like this meaningful relationship with ourselves, this is where we can start to make a difference. What is someone else's? What is mine? What is something I can leave for my mind? What is something I leave for my heart, my body, my feelings? What is something that has to make sense to me? And what is something that just needs to feel right for me in my context? And I truly hope this journey has some inspiration in it for you. Because one thing I have learned to trust as well, if I have this nudge to share something or say something or offer something, then I might not even know who maybe had to hear it or receive it, or kind of like who had something to extract from it. I know for sure for me, this journey with anxiety and how I grew up with it and what I have learned from it has been, to me, absolutely priceless source of wisdom already. And it's proven to be an absolute gold mine of mine, where I keep extracting more realizations and more more gold. I feel like, I'm digging for gold all the time from some of the hardest things I've ever went through. And I hope you see that whatever thing you've been journeying with will also become your source of wisdom. It will become a huge, important chapter for you as well, that you will be extremely grateful for. And obviously, if you would like some guidance or bit of a help to turn your life experience in the gold mine as well, I'm here for you as well. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a pleasure to speak my story, speak my truth, and share a bit of my journey with you. I cannot wait for talking to you again very soon. Much love, guys.